Let's talk about growing up in the church, the purity culture. And if you guys don't know what purity culture, it's that like promise you're not going to have sex until you're married. But we're not going to talk about sex. We're just going to tell you not to do it. And then like this whole thing for over the years and years and years of sex is bad. And then all of a sudden you're supposed to turn that into sex is good. Is this something you guys have worked with or have talked about?
100%. My wife and I both grew up with very strict Catholic mothers, but didn't quote unquote grow up in the church. But the in the church part for us was kind of a forcing of being there, and very much like purity culture, never really going deeper as to why, never explaining things. It's more of just a strict rigidity that anyone outside the church understands as rules, and the church is strict and just they're robbing our freedom. That's usually the narrative we hear. And the purity culture has done a really, really good job at harming people at a really young age, with creating a impossible barrier between God's design for sex and sexual struggles, because our struggles need to be, like we're talking about, brought to safe places to talk about. And when there's a purity culture, it creates this layer of shame that if you even share that you have a struggle, you're dirty, you're evil, you're messed up, which is not the case at all. And one of the challenges with purity culture is it really talks about behavior modification and lust management, which don't work. You can't just replace a behavior and think that's going to work. Like reading your Bible, praying, going to church, those are all nice things, but they're not the answer to quitting porn, healing erectile dysfunction, and all these other things. So purity culture has done a lot of harm. And I think the overarching thing that it has done is it actually has made men think that they're lustful beasts that are untamable. And all these women have basically become, gatekeepers for men so that they don't lust. And it's really hard to have a successful relationship when that is your dynamic.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's so much there, like the guilt, the guilt, and the fact that nobody's willing to talk about it. I was very, very fortunate. My dad, was open with me. He took me, I think it was 12, took me on a trip, and we talked about it. We did the James Dobson thing. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but there was this whole like,
No.
let's talk about sex and talk through all the terms. So none of it was like, it was like, it's all on the table. Let's talk about it. Let's demystify it. But that was only like the start, right? I mean, and then you go through this, you go off to college or whatever it is, and girls become very interesting, and there's a lot of temptation. Oh, is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. So where did you talk about your own addiction? So let's segue into your story. I'd love to hear that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. So for me, growing up, I had a really great family. Like my dad, I always joked around. He was the dad that everyone wanted to be their dad. He was there. He was driving kids to the, field trips. He would come see us on his lunch breaks. But unfortunately, he was more of a buddy when I needed him most, when I got into the ages of seeing pornography and needing these kind of conversations to happen. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for many years. She was so loving and supportive. But when I saw pornography, that's when she fell away from the church. She started drinking and smoking, and she was actually not home a lot. And I had this gaping hole in my heart. My dad was around a lot. My mom was around a lot. I see porn and they're gone. And Shawn, this little boy, had this deep longing to be seen, to be known. And I had this thing called pornography come into my life, and I felt shame and guilt and embarrassed, and then no one to talk to. So there was this really weird void in my life at that time that I a 10-year-old boy can't reason with. So that's really where my story begins, is this longing to be seen. And that was really amplified with two stories. One of them was I froze the computer at maybe 12 years old or so with porn, and I didn't know what to do, got my mom to fix the computer, and she saw what was on there, and she never talked to me about it. She abdicated her authority, her influence as a parent, and it hurt me so bad. I was just longing for her to see that I was in trouble.